Hey, this is Luke with Out of Darts. Today I am going to show you how to build the Little Rocket Crooked Cousin. Crooked Cousin is the latest addition to the Little Rocket family. It's an angled foregrip style blaster, and it's really versatile. A variety of options. We've got about 8 different barrel types with more on the way, and we've been really excited about this one, so I'm excited to show you how to put it together. The hardware kit is very similar to the Little Rocket and Proud Papa. It'll come pre-bagged and you'll have all of the components you need. Your body, when you receive it, is going to come with your tube pre-inserted. There's a thin wall polycarb tube in here that gives us the tight air seal. There are 2 spring options for Crooked Cousin. They are the same 2 spring options that are available for Proud Papa. We've got a high power and a low power. You can pretty obviously feel these if you happen to have ordered both of them. If you want to use this repeatedly on a foregrip of a blaster, I would actually recommend going with the lighter variant because it'll be a little bit easier for you to prime while on the blaster. Now, if you want maximum power, go for the high power spring. Should you get the high power spring and you're like, this is too hard for me to deal with, if you happen to have a bolt cutters, you can just cut a couple coils off until you hit the sweet spot for your strength and your specific setup. Today I'm actually going to install the low power spring because I want one to test out this weekend at a private Nerf game, our first game back in a while. So I'm going to put this on in our build today. The tools required are very simple to complete this mod. You're going to need a set of pliers, a number 1 screwdriver. You could get away with a number 2. You're going to want some super lube or other synthetic grease that's suitable for PLA plastic. And then you're going to need either an M2.5 hex or a driver, which is what we tend to prefer in the shop because we are doing a lot of these over time. So first thing, you can take this O-ring and we're going to just place it inside here. And you're going to kind of just push it down with your fingernail. It may want to fight you for just a second, but as you keep working your way through, it will eventually seat down into the channel. And I kind of just like to go in a ring, pushing down with my fingernail until, voila, it has filled out that channel. Once it's filled that out, you're good to go. You do not need to lubricate this, and I wouldn't recommend lubricating it because that does interface with your barrel. And if there's lubricant on there, you're going to attract a lot of dirt and dust and grime. And the way that it sits, it's quite tight, so it doesn't need that additional lubricant. We're going to start by installing our rail. Normally this part will actually match your color, but due to versioning and when we filmed this, I just didn't have the parts ready to go. So you're going to put that on. It's pretty obvious which direction it goes on, and you're going to take the 2 longest hex screws, these are M3 by 30, and just press them in place. Next, you've got 2 hex nuts, which are going to be pushed in place right there. You can use your pliers to just push them down to the base to get them far enough down where they can actually install with the screws. So give that a little bit of... Now these are supposed to be a snug fit because if they are not, if you ever take the side rail completely off, you may run into trouble where you're not able to get it off at all, or rather they will fall out. We don't want these falling out on the floor. So if the fit feels a little tight, that is definitely where we want it. Obviously, if you ever have any problems with assembly, let us know. Now you can use a hex key. It's an M2.5 hex key, but I'm going to save some time. Cool. So that's good to go there. We're all set. Next, we're going to install our square nuts. There are 4 square nuts, and you are going to install them in the 4 slots that are just below here. I like to kind of grab them and force one in. So what I'm doing there is I'm grabbing one on the side like this, and then I'm going to work it in, just push it in partly, and then you can use the hole to actually finish most of the installation. And then I'll show you the final step at the end there. And you're just going to rotate around and do all 4. I will say that I am not an expert at building these. I've got a great team here that helps me build, so there are team members here that have surpassed my build ability. However, I have built, I don't know, 50, something like that. So again, you're going to kind of set it, and then you're going to pinch it in place. And then finally, you're going to poke with the end of your pliers just to get it all the way in. Go around and do all 4. And when you're done, you want to look down here and just make sure that all 4 of these holes are clear and that you can see the threads and that it's not partially inserted. If it's partially inserted, you won't be able to get your screws in later. Next, we're going to install our priming arm, and I am going to choose a T-pull for this one. You get a lot of nice leverage, so it makes for a really easy prime. Now, you do want to consider what orientation you want this to sit at. Obviously, this will sit on the blaster maybe like that direction, so whether you want it that way or that way, I think, well, let's try this way this time. It's really up to you, and it's not too difficult to swap. It's just 4 screws total to remove. But you do need to consider which direction it goes in at the point of installation. So I'm going to choose right now that it goes this way. I'm going to insert it into this square hole right there. And give that a slide, make sure that that's plenty loose in case there's any little bit of support plastic there or anything like that. Next, we'll take our spring and we'll drop that on there as well. And finally, we'll take our plunger head and we will put that right on top. And it only keys in one of four directions, so it's pretty easy there. Next, you're going to take this 12mm flange screw that has the nice wide lip at the top, and you're going to screw that in. You can use a number 1 or number 2 screwdriver here. Oh, this is 0. As I said, you can use a 1 or a 2. This is a 2. That last one I was holding was actually 0, which is too small for this head. You want to apply pressure downwards. I'm holding onto the entire thing because you want this to be nice and tight. You do not want this coming out. This is the sole thing that holds the entire plunger system together. Surprisingly, they are very resilient. That's our plunger assembly. After that, we're going to take our O-ring and we can just pop that right on, and we'll take our super lube and apply generously. Now, you may notice this is a floating O-ring. It's relatively loose here. That is intentional, so keep that in mind. It's the kind of thing that we occasionally get emails, my O-ring's too big. And I like to go with a fairly generous amount of this. Some of it will ultimately end up in the bottom of the plunger tube. Won't hurt anything. After you've kind of got that on there, you can smear it around. Then finally, we're going to insert this here. Now, of course, it's got to go in the correct direction, so we'll go in like this. And I like to kind of go at an angle to avoid getting any of the lubricant on the actual body of the blaster. And now that we've done that, we can take our 4 body screws and insert them in the top. And then we can install all 4 with our hex driver or our M2.5 Allen key. Once I've got that in, I like to pull on this a few times, make sure that I do have good smooth travel and I don't feel anything in the way. Lastly, we're going to put in our trigger, and this is probably the most complex part. We've actually been debating whether to potentially only offer these pre-assembled, that is, due to just the more difficult assembly, and that comes from this angled chamfered space here and getting that pin in. So what you're going to want to do is take your pliers, hold the pin like this. You're going to want to just get it started here, and you're going to put a fair amount of force on the side. You may notice that one of these holes is a little tapered slightly to make it a bit easier to get this started, so keep that in mind. And then you want to just work that down in far enough so that it's held in place. You can also use a surface, and I don't like to push on my nice pretty table here, so I generally use a metal workbench or the side of this, but essentially I just gave that a nice little push to go in. Next, we will take our catch spring and our trigger, and we're just going to twist this in place, make sure that it is tight on there so it's not popping off. And then we can drop that in place on the body, making sure that the end of this spring ends up in that little circle down inside the channel. As you push this together, you want to make sure that this is lined up, that you are lining up this hole with this pin, and push that down in place, flush. Should sit flat all the way along, and you know you're in the right spot. What I'm going to do is actually use this piece of metal as a hard object to get this started. So I'll just push down. And I have not caught it yet, so I'm going to go a little bit farther. So if you give this a press down on a surface and kind of roll into it, you can actually get it installed almost all the way, just like that. And then you can finally take a pliers and give it a little bit of a squeeze end to end. So essentially what I'm doing under the cloth there is pinching like this. I like to, again, you partially install it, put it down on a hard surface and press. You kind of just roll this down and then cover your pliers. So don't do this with the raw pliers, and you're going to squeeze between those two holes like that. But again, you're doing that underneath the cloth. That way you're not scratching the actual plastic, because you are doing metal on metal there. And then if we're done, we should catch and we are good to go. So the last thing to do is to finally put a barrel on. Here we've got the triple and we are good to go. And with that, we have built the Crooked Cousin. I am really excited about this one. It's just a fun form factor and it's unique. You know, there aren't a lot of other options out there like this. Pretty much none as far as we're aware. And I think this color scheme looks pretty hot actually. Even though Hasbro's not been good to us, I still have fond memories of classic Hasbro days. Hopefully we get that back. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let us know if you have any questions in the comments. We are watching those comments like crazy, and we do our best to respond to as many as possible. I have some help here in the studio. That's Perry, so you may see him respond to you as well. Thanks again. Until next time, I'm out of darts.